I get the so now in this data set, you have some voiced vowels, some voiceless vowels. How do you know which one is the voiceless vowel? Anyone?
They
Sir, I
place
think
a
the
dot
circle
below the
under.
vowels which are voiceless.
Sorry, who said something? Somebody gave the answer.
So it's me, Manas. I said
Okay.
to identify the voiceless vowels, they've placed a dot below them.
Okay. Anybody else whoever was saying there was another voice which came up?
Yes, sir, I said the same thing, like the circle underneath.
Yeah, as you have rightly pointed out, E, when I write the E vowel, this is the voiced E vowel. It is not a dot, but it's a circle on the bottom of E. When I have the circle on the bottom of E, I know that it is going to be a voiceless one, right? Okay, so now considering that, I want you to look into this data and try to find out if the voiceless and the voiced sounds are in complementary distribution, right? And which, if that is the case, which one is the has phonemic status, which one has phonetic status, etc., etc. So quickly look into this data and come up with the answer. How much time do we need for that? Maybe about 7 minutes, 6 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. Okay, so 6 minutes, right? Anybody else is having fun looking at Rupavat Ganesh's fan spinning at different speeds like I am having? There we go. That's interesting. Nice. So those of you who are doing this problem, can you just update me how you are actually doing this? Okay, the fan is going the opposite side now, is it? It's on the opposite, going the opposite side. Why?
Sir, I think it's because of the frame rate the camera is recording at. So if it varies, it
How we can?
updates. Sir, there is a phenomenon called, okay, I don't remember the name. Like there are videos on the internet where helicopters are taking off, but the camera is recording at the same frame rate as the.
That I also saw that. Was
Okay.
it? What was that the Russian helicopter video that you're talking about? I was looking at a Russian helicopter video actually, where the frame rate and the rate of like.
Rotation of the rotor blades of the helicopter are the same, so it looks like the rotors are not moving, right?
Yeah.
So if it varies slightly, like if the frame rate is increased slightly or decreased slightly, you can make the blades look like it's rotating the opposite side, right? So the opposite side. So
That is
I think that is.
what I'm trying to find out is I'm trying to understand is that which one is it, like when the frame rate is slower or faster when we will see it going the opposite way. So his Rupavat's phone was because of the internet connection, probably this was happening, right? Some, but like what is the reason? Anyway, so maybe we can think about it later. Okay, so those of you who are trying to solve this problem, can you tell me how you are approaching the problem now?
Sir, I think it is there in complementary distribution. Like voiceless vowels are occurring only at the end of the word. That's all.
Fine. Okay. So now the best way to approach these kind of problems is that you find out the vowels, uh, list out the environments of the vowels. For example, a versus a, and e versus e, etc. Or for simplicity's sake, what we'll do is that we will just put vowel versus voiceless vowels environments, right? As you have already found out, whenever there is a voiceless vowel, it is going to be the word final position, right? Initially, when I looked into the data, I was going towards more like going towards having a voiceless consonant here, like sa, ka, makes the vowel, or ka, sa together makes the vowel voiceless. But that is not the case. Why? It is not the case that. Yeah.
The word like the word e meaning peppery.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has a vowel, then it has a vowel, then a consonant, and then the voiceless.
Yeah. So here the environment is the same, ka, ka, but the first one is not changing, and the second one is actually second I is this one. So it's a good observation. So I was looking more like into here, la. This is the what we call the Villaric la. It's a normal la is like that, but sometimes there can be a la which is produced like a towards the back, and then it is called the Villaric la and written like this, right? So when I see the Villaric la, which is the voice sound, but which is also at the before, just before a voiceless vowel. So my initial idea, that whenever you have a consonant, voiceless consonant, followed by that the vowel will be voiceless, is incorrect. As you have rightly pointed out, the idea that the voiceless vowels occur at the end of the word is basically the correct assumption. What about the voiced vowels? Where do they occur? Where do they occur? Where do these voiced vowels occur?
Sir, between two consonants.
Between two consonants. Is it always the case?
Sir, the if the word starts with a vowel, then the starting vowel will also be voiced, right?
Maybe, we don't know, but because is there a data? We don't have the data, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will I would assume something like from the limited data also, that elsewhere it is all voiced, right? So which one will be the phonemic form and which one will be the phonetic form?
Phonemic would be voiced one.
And this one is the phonetic, right? So if we want to write the rule, how would we write? We can write something like V, right? And here we can put plus voice becomes, we may not repeat this one. We can simply say minus voice. It is understood that what feature is this thing when it is at the end of the word. Fine. Okay. So the anyway, so this is like a phonology, and this is basically not part of this course, but I'm just giving you this information because it is very important to understand how allophones and phonemes are actually distributed in the languages, and also how you can find out which one is a phoneme and which one is an allophone, right? So all the uh, both voiced and voiceless vowels are basically associated with the same voiced vowels, right? So this is the idea here. So did we answer the question? Are they inferior variation, complementary? Okay, they're in complementary. So the correct answers are these two vowels are in complementary distribution, right? Which one is the basic sound or phonemic sound? The voiced one is the phonemic sound, right? And phonetics context for its allophones, the phonetic context for its allophone is basically word final position. Fine. Okay, is there any other questions or comments here? Okay, no
Sir,
questions. Yeah, yes.
this may not be always correct. Like we have predicted with the limited data.
Mhm. Please repeat the question. Ah, it's for a word, yes, right. Because yeah, one sec. Let me quickly because whenever we write this, this one basically indicates what we call in linguistics a morpheme boundary, right? Or you can simply think about it as a word boundary. But morpheme is a little bit different idea from the word which you'll find in a which you'll know from a introduction to linguistics course. I'm not sure if you have done here there or not, so that's why I'm not going into that. But to simplify it, this symbol is for word boundary, and that is why whenever I gave syllables, I used to give a mark like this and put syllable on the top, right? Huh. Yes, please continue with your second doubt. No, it can be from any environment, any phonemic environment. Okay. So Karthik, did you want to ask a question?
Sir, like we have predicted these rules by limited number of data, no, sir.
Huh.
Sir, like this may not be always correct. Like
Yes.
how, like whether predicting the real rules, like we would be taking so much data and predicting, or just some data.
So that is the whole point about whole difference between what you and I are doing in the phonetics course versus what is done in phonology. In phonology, it is all about sampling a small amount of data and arriving at bigger uh, conclusions about larger set of data, right? The whole idea is that these are basically theoretical areas. So the idea is that if you do a small experiment on a small amount of data, if you make a conclusion about a small amount of data, that should be applicable to larger set of data. Hmm. However, as you have rightly pointed out, there may be cases, right, that after we looked into this data, we look into another data, then we'll see that there are cases where a is actually voiced also at the word final position. Then we'll have to revise our earlier hypothesis and then go for the second hypothesis that here the I is not working, etc. So when we were doing phonology courses, we also had to do phonology courses in our masters and in our PhD, etc. So we are given usually of the same language. We are given small set of data first, Then we make a conclusion, then the teacher gives us the next set of data where our previous conclusion was completely this thing demolished. Now we have to like again get newer like the conclusion, and so on and so forth, right? So that's why it takes a longer time to understand a complete language. And also remember that some of these occurrences, the one that I'm talking about, that sa with a vowel which is voiceless, which is consistently happening. But there can be, let's say, some of the occurrences which are very limited in the data, in the language. For example, out of every 10,000 cases, you might find that phenomena only one or two times also. Right. However, that's part of the grammar of the language, and that's why it takes a longer time to completely understand a language and specifically to analyze a language. So I'm not going against you. I'm absolutely supporting your idea. Yes, that is the point, that people have been like um, people have been making these assumptions on smaller amount of data. But as time goes, like different like more and more data comes in. And also let's say like who are these data from? Maybe this data is from one speaker who is from a city. If you go to a village, and for the same language you collect data, would it happen again? Would this thing replicate or not? Those are more experimental questions. And also you have to see why this is happening is also because the limitations of these works when they have started. These works started, let's say, in the late part of the 20th century, went up till let's say the 1970s, 1960s. Until that, the whole concept of working on big data was not there. Right. We were mostly sampling and making assumptions until that time. But now we can actually collect data from, let's say, 20,000 people, right? And then come to conclusions about a language, right? Because in the last 10 years, 20 years, our processing power has increased, our ability to store data has increased, and so on and so forth. Right. So a lot of these things, what we are making assumptions out of small set of data, this is also because the limitations in the storage or the processing power also. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm guessing not. If there are no more questions, then we'll go to the next part, which is basically going now beyond the segments. What are segments?
All vowels and consonants are segments.
All vowels and consonants are segments. Now we are going beyond segments, which are called suprasegments. Fine. So, anybody knows what suprasegments are? Anybody has any answer to this? What are the suprasegments?
Maybe for vowels and consonants, we'll add some tone, like tone, because tone can also be a feature. Like
Yeah.
we can add speech features to that segment, so we can call it supra segment.
Okay. Super. Fine. So now, can you tell me why will we call it suprasegments? Any idea?
Because analyzing them will get more idea than analyzing segments, because the word in which we speak, the tone also makes a significant difference in the meaning of what we speak, right? Of understanding of the word what they are speaking.
Come again. Come again.
Maybe supra segments give more insight to what the other people are trying to speak or something like that.
Hmm.
Because with analyzing tone and everything, we can also get the emotional status of another person we studied with. You studied already, right?
Yes, fine, fine. Okay, so now let's see, why we call them super segments. Because one of the reasons why we call them super segments is because these are basically features which are added to the segments. These are not part of the segments, rather they are the features added to the segments. And I will give you an example why they are uh, thought about so. Okay, so one of the suprasegments is basically the length. Okay, so in many languages the vowel length is contrastive, as you have already known it. For example, in Hindi you have a difference between choti e and badi e, and choti e is, you know, that it is going to be a short vowel, and badi e is going to be a long vowel, right? Okay, now what is happening with this duration? So what basically is happening here is that nothing changes in the segmental feature of this E vowel. Only thing is that is happening is that the length of this vowel is changing. Hmm. So what is changing? The change is happening not at the F1 or the F2 or any of the form and features, but only in the duration. What you're doing is that in the second case, you're sustaining it, right? So that is a completely additional feature to the uh, F1 and the F2 features, right? So now you talked about tones. Let's go back to the discussion on tones. Now what we did is that we looked into uh, the difference between tones in a language like Chinese. We said that we could have a tone like this, right, which is the tone 3 of Chinese, right, which is written like this, where the tone is the fundamental frequency dips down and rises. For example, this is pronounced as ma, right? Here, in this case, let's say we will take the second tone case, where it is only rising, which is like ma, right? So there is a difference between ma and ma, right? In this first case, it is falling down and rising. In the second case, it is going from bottom to the top. Hmm. However, what we can do is that we can simply delete this and we can add another word like ta, right? In the ta also, even if we delete the consonants here, right, we can still pronounce it with the same tones like ta and ta, right, in the same way. So what is happening is that the consonants and the vowels may not be changing. However, these features are not changing on its own. On the other hand, you also know that these features cannot actually survive without the consonant and vowel. So only when you have the consonant and vowel, only then you can have the rising or the falling tones in the language. So in other words, while they are associated with the segments, they are operating on their own, right? And that's why they're kind of independent, and that's why they're in the supra or the top level, above the level of the segments, and that's why they're called the supra segmental features, right? So in many cases, what might happen is that I might completely delete the consonant vowels, and this suprasegmental feature might still remain. Okay, so as we were talking about, duration, right? Duration. What we can do is that we can put assume duration in terms of timing tiers, and timing can be put as a how do I say, as with the notation of x's, different crosses, right? Each cross would assume one timing tier. So when we were talking about a choti e, it will be only associated with one timing tier. But when we are talking about the badi e, this is, let's say, this e in Hindi, and if we are talking about this badi e like this, then x, 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 and then this e will be now associated with two timing tiers, right? However, we know that without this, right, without this tier also, this can be produced. But the point is that this timing cannot be produced with any segments. That's why it is called the suprasegmental feature. Okay, and in many cases, you might delink this feature with that segment also, but the suprasegmental feature still remains, and I'll give you one example of that. But before that, let me ask you if you have any other questions regarding this. Any question? No question? Okay. So then I'll give you the next example that I was thinking about. One sec. Okay. So here is the next example. In the next example, let me show you a word like car, right? A word like car is usually written as C-A-R. It is pronounced as ka, a, and ra, right? Okay, does anyone know how it will be pronounced in, let's say, a language like British English? In Indian English, we already know that we pronounce it as car, right? What will happen in British English? Any idea?
Sir, they do not pronounce the last R. They just say ka.
Right, super. So now let's assume that what is happening in normal Indian English or American English is that we are actually assigning one time element to each of these consonants and vowels. For example, ka is associated with one time element, I is associated with another, ra is associated with another one. Fine. Okay. Now, what you have told me is that in British English, what we are going to do. Sorry. Please give me a second. Okay, just ignore this part. In British English, what we are going to do is that we are just going to pronounce the k and the a, right? So we have only two timing tiers. But remember, we already know, but even in British English, we know that originally the word actually has an R. So there is one more timing tier which is actually for the ra sound, but it is deleted. Right? The link between the timing tier and the ra is now deleted. However, the timing still remains. Any idea now what happens with this leftover timing?
The vowel, the I is produced for more time.
Okay, so as you have rightly pointed out, what now happens is that a is attached to this timing tier, and as a result of that, in British English, when you produce a word like car, and which is becomes a ka, the a becomes a long vowel. Fine. So this also tells you that as soon as we are deleting this ra, this does not get deleted. Right? This still remains and tries to associate itself with a new segment. And that is why we are assuming that this is an independent independent level altogether, which we call the auto sorry supra segment, right? Supra-segmental tier. Fine. Any question or comments here? No question. Okay. So in many languages, suprasegmentals can be vowels. In many languages, we might have difference between long and short a, like we have in Hindi. Like in Finnish, you have a difference between tapan, which is like a long a versus tapan, right? I meet versus I kill. In many languages, stress itself is used as one of the suprasegmental features. So I think we are running out of time. So I'll just quickly finish with this, only this one, and then we'll take attendance. So a stress syllable is usually more prominent. Can you quickly give me an example of stress in a language? And what happens with the contrastive stress? In the same language, we have two syllables and we have stress on different syllables. What happens? Can you give me an example? Anybody who can give an example of stress? Okay, I will give you a word and I want to know from you, right? Let's take this word present, right? What happens when we differentiate the stress in this word? There are two syllables here, pre and zent. Sometimes I can put stress in the first syllable, sometimes I can put stress in the second syllable. So what is the difference that will happen when we change the stress from the first syllable to a second syllable?
The meaning changes.
Yeah, can you give the what is the change of meaning for that example?
When the first syllable is stressed, it means the present time, and when the second syllable is stressed, it means a gift.
Slightly correct, but slightly incorrect. Anybody else wants to try it?
I think when the second syllable is stressed, it becomes a verb, like to present something.
Okay. And when, okay, and when the first syllable is stressed, then
uh, it's a noun, like a gift or the present time, I think.
so the stress in IPA etc. we can put stress with this vertical bar before the syllable, right? So here we are putting it before the first syllable. That means it's a word present, right? And then it is going to be a noun, which will be a gift, right? Or time now, right? As of now, etc. When we have present, right, it will be a verb, right, where the stress is on the second syllable, and it will be like I'm presenting a presentation, I'm presenting my slides, etc., etc. Very quickly, another question to you. When I'm differentiating this stress between the first syllable and second syllable, present versus present, what are the things that I'm changing? You have already come to know about like fundamental frequency, energy, duration, etc., etc. Right? So, what are the things that I'm changing when I'm putting the stress in the first syllable versus stress in the second syllable? Anyone quickly wants to give that answer? What are the things I'm changing?
So the length of the vowel in the stressed syllable is longer.
Okay. Yeah, fine. So this is one of the things. And in the next following days, maybe we can just quickly do some experiments using the Pratt, where we can show what is the difference between this stressed and the unstressed syllable, right? In the meanwhile, you can go now and give your attendance. I'll open it for 1 minute from now. Okay, we're gonna stop the sheet from sharing another 10 seconds. I'm closing the sheet now. Okay, fine. Any other concerns or questions? If not, then we'll leave for the day. Fine? Okay, then please, you can start leaving. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.